Welcome to Women in Healthcare Leadership podcast series brought to you by Medscape Education. Our goal is to provide a platform where we can educate, advocate, and inspire women leaders to lift as they rise. With every episode, you'll hear from her as we showcase the perspectives, insights, and experiences of women who are leading the way in advancing women's health and empowering the next generation of women in healthcare. My name is Stacy from Medscape Education. Today, you're going to hear from women leaders at Medscape who are hosting season 1 of this podcast and why they're passionate about this series and the individuals that they're going to be interviewing. So let's kick this off. And Yelena, can we hear from you first?
My name is Yelena Sparopoulos, and I'm the Vice President of Clinical Strategy and Sales at Medscape Education. So, Stacy, you and I have known each other for a decade now, 10 years now. So I've been with Medscape Education for 10 years, and prior to Medscape, I worked in the healthcare industry for another 10 years. So I've had a privilege to work in the healthcare industry for nearly 20 years now. And I was really fortunate in a sense that I had really great role models and mentors who were women. Starting with my own family, my grandmother was a pediatrician, my mom's a pediatrician. I've had several women who very early in my career were able to steer me along and help me out in my career. So I feel like it's really, really important for us women to elevate each other and not just serve as role models, but really be able to provide each other with relevant tools and resources to help promote our own careers. So this is something that I've always been really passionate about, and it's really wonderful to see where we've gotten in the last 20 years. So I'm really excited to share not only everything that I've learned along the way, but some of the great tools and resources that exist today that maybe didn't exist 20 years ago. So really privileged to be doing this with you, Stacey.
And how about you, Christy?
I'm Christy Rohani Montes, and I am Director of Clinical Strategy at Medscape Education Global. I was born and I grew up in Switzerland, and when I was a teenager, I was completely stunned to learn that women only gained the right to vote in Switzerland as late as 1971. And in fact, in one of the cantons, it was even 1990. And I thought, how could that be? Switzerland is a progressive Western country. But there was this widely held belief, even here, really not that long ago, that women should be in a domestic role and not take any part in politics. And I think that, fast forward to today, while, I've grown up in a community where men and women are deemed to be equal and on the surface, but if you scratch a little below the surface, you can see all kinds of biases across aspects of every aspect of life. And I think that, when you look into healthcare, we know that, even though women on average live longer than men, they have worse health-related quality of life throughout their life. They have more medical problems than men do, and they receive poorer healthcare in developed countries for a variety of reasons. And that has to do with both sex and gender. And so I think, this whole issue has not been given enough attention. And so I hope with this podcast series will bring, some of those issues to the forefront.
And let's hear from Victoria, another one of our hosts.
I'm Victoria Harvey-Jones, and I'm Associate Director of Clinical Strategy in Medscape Oncology Global. It's a pleasure to be surrounded. I know we can't see each other at the moment, but I can picture you all surrounded by you lovely, strong ladies, strong women, and the people who are listening as well. And 20 years seems to be the magic number there. I've been reflecting, my goodness, I've been in the industry for 20 years as well. And I think back when I first started and I was a young whippersnapper, I think really, back at university, working hard, trying to build my research career at that time, moving through PhD and postdoc, and then moving into our industry now in medical education. And, I wanted to have a family during that as well. And I think this is a big thing that as women, which, come on, guys, men don't necessarily have to face, that we are as women, strong women, but we at times have to have a break to have a family. And then it's thinking about how we then, move forward, get our career back on track, so to speak, which in itself is at times challenging, and perhaps it shouldn't be like that, but it is. This is the reality, I think, that women, as we're facing, the challenges that we have to push forward into leadership positions. There's no denying us as women, we do have different challenges. At times it's all on us to do the responsibility at home, etc. I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive, family with regards to that. But I think that's something that I'm sort of passionate about, and championing other women, supporting other women, people who want to go and have a family, and to really big each other up and support us, and to continue to sort of move forward in our careers. And I hate the phrase "we can have it all," but I believe today that we can get that right balance with the right support, and I think that crowd of strong women is really important.
And last but certainly not least, let's meet Karen.
Hi, Stacey. So really nice to be here with you today, and to everyone. I'm Karen Reid. I'm a Senior Director at Medscape Education. So from my perspective, I'm very excited to be part of this initiative. I've had a long history myself of being in the industry for around 20 years. As Victoria rightly said, it seems to be this magic number. I'm a pharmacist by training, and studied here in the UK, and went on to then practice in both a hospital and community settings before I then eventually moved on into Medscape. And I think if I look back on my career, I've had so many important role models that have helped me to grow and build throughout the years, not just from home life, starting with family and an incredibly supportive parent and mother, to it through my degrees, my university education, to working here in the UK, and then on into Medscape. And I think having mentors that Jelena, you talked about, and sponsors and supportive women around, is so important to advance people forward. And it's so important to also hear those stories and hear those voices from those people, so we can hear about lessons learned and advice shared. And I think for me, that's what this initiative is really all about, amplifying those voices. And I'm very excited about it.
Well, I have to say I'm in awe of all four of you. I mean, all of you have advanced degrees. You have so much to offer. I feel like we could do the podcast just with us, but I want to get into who are we going to be talking to. Jelena, do you want to let us know who you're going to be speaking with?
Sure. So I'm actually moderating two different podcast episodes recordings. The first discussion that I'm having is with Professor Carolyn Lam out of Singapore, who is an extremely prominent researcher who has done numerous studies in heart failure and in cardiology, and really a pioneer and leader when it comes to clinical research, as well as many different innovations in the field of cardiology. She and I will be discussing many different issues related to women's health, the care that women receive in cardiology, as well as clinical trials in cardiology, along with Karina Morley from AstraZeneca. And Karina, as a senior executive at AstraZeneca, has had the privilege of leading many different cardiovascular trials. And so a lot of discussions revolves around how do we ensure equity in clinical trials, right? It's not enough just to do a clinical trial, well, 80% men, and then say, we'll just adapt it to women. That's there's many studies that show that is not sufficient. In addition to that, I'm also discussing a slightly separate topic, but related to, again, cardiovascular health, with Fatima Rodriguez, who is a professor at Stanford University, along with Joanne Foody, who is now the chief medical officer at Esperion in the pharmaceutical industry, but is herself a former professor of cardiology at Harvard University. It's really fascinating because for that episode, Joanne was actually Fatima's mentor. So a lot of the discussion revolves around strong mentorship and how that can really shape somebody's career. But then we also discuss a lot of the gaps around the care that women receive in cardiology. The fact that women often, describe their symptoms very differently. There's the common joke that, when a man presents to the emergency room with chest pain, they go, "Oh my God, I'm dying." And so the same woman presents, she's like, "Yeah, I feel a little bit of discomfort," right? So they're taken, very differently. So a lot of it that revolves around communication and understanding that women and men present differently. And as a result, unfortunately, there's still this big disparity, inequity in the care that they will receive. So I'm really excited, but it really hits home. And there's so many great points brought up by these amazing women in both episodes.
And Christy, who will you be talking to?
So I'm speaking with two amazing women. One is Antonella Chadna Santuccioni, and she is the co-founder and CEO of a nonprofit called the Women's Brain Project in Switzerland. And then also Visha van der Fleer, and she is an Alzheimer's specialist, one of the leading Alzheimer's specialists worldwide, based at the Alzheimer's Center in Amsterdam, UMC, in the Netherlands. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons that women don't progress on their career ladder as often or as high as men do. And, you know, some of the sort of progress we're making in certain countries in particular, you know, to address those discrepancies. And then we'll talk about the sex and gender differences across, you know, really a laundry list of neurological and psychiatric conditions. So differences in prevalence, in symptoms, in progression, in treatment response. And the idea that, you know, despite all these very clear differences that we know about, that we've shown, the fact that research and clinical trials don't analyze differences between men and women. So there's a lot of data out there, but we're not seeing those differences. And then, you know, as a consequence of not looking at that, drugs are being withdrawn from the market because of adverse events affecting women. So that'll be highlighted in that episode. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation.
So we've gone from cardiovascular to mental health and neurological disorders. Victoria, what will you be covering?
Thank you, Stacey. So I'm going to have the honour of speaking with Professor Dame Leslie Fallowfield, a world-leading expert in HCP patient communications and oncology, as well as Ava Thalman, who's held multiple senior leadership positions in pharma. And it really does promise to be an inspiring conversation where together we're going to explore the gaps for women in being able to advance into leadership roles, you know, how we can then really close these gaps to raise women's profiles and their leadership presence. So a lot of what we've talked earlier about really just inspiring each other, building each other, moving outside of our comfort zone as well at times. This came out as a big discussion, and I think that's something that's going to be really important to explore. And then bringing it back to the patient, you know, how all of this, these conversations can then impact healthcare outcomes.
And Karen, who will you be talking with?
So I'm going to be talking with Sandy Milligan, Dr. Sandy Milligan, who's the head of research and development from Organon, which is a global pharmaceutical company focused on women's health, and also to Jennifer Gedkin, who is an associate professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the Emory University School of Medicine in the United States. And we're really going to explore some of the issues around the gaps in women's health in particular, for the focus for our episode, and also looking at what are those barriers to elevating women into leadership roles in healthcare, and what are some of the tips and tools and tricks that we have to be able to support that along. I think some of the startling statistics when we look at women's health is really the lack of investment in women's health. Less than 1% of all R&D funding goes into female-specific conditions outside of cancer. And I think this is really quite overwhelming to consider that statistic. So we're going to look at what are some of the causes of that, and then really going on into, women in leadership and how we elevate them, the importance of mentorship and sponsorship, and the importance of supporting our colleagues as we go along as well.
Wonderful. And I'm also going to have the opportunity to talk with Dr. Shikha Jain, who is the founder of the Women in Medicine Summit, which is now in its 5th year. She is an incredible voice for women. I know we've heard the words sponsorship and mentorship. We're going to dig in deeper of what that actually means. We also are going to talk about what are some of the persistent gaps that are still existing. We've come a long way as women in healthcare. However, there are still things that we need to accomplish. She also has some great information about really also lifting up the allies who are right there, the men and others who are there supporting us. So I'm looking forward to a great conversation on that.
And Stacey, do you want to tell us maybe also why you're passionate about the subject?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this because, like you, Yelena, my whole career, I can identify those women, I like to call them my women North Stars, that led me down the path that I was going on, that lifted me up on those bad, tough days, that told me, if that's a phrase you can use, to do something different that I wouldn't have thought for myself. And I think we have such a responsibility as women, um, to lift others up as we rise. We all have come from, lower beginnings. We're now, I won't say that we're at the end of our careers, but we're definitely at the middle of our careers and we're going up. And we have a responsibility to those who are following behind us to create the world that we wanted to see and to really have all of those opportunities present for the females coming up in healthcare leadership. Um, there is definitely what they say majority rules, and I think as long as we stay together and use the collective strength of all of the women, sky's the limit. So that's why I'm excited about participating in this podcast. Thank you for joining us to meet our host. We hope that you check in with us every week to hear from these incredible women and their guests. Be sure to follow us on Medscape Education LinkedIn for more information. And we look forward to seeing you soon, or I guess you hearing us soon. Thanks for joining us. Tune in next week as we continue our journey to amplify the voices of women leaders in pharma and medicine. Hear From Her is brought to you by Medscape Education. Please subscribe to Hear From Her on your preferred podcast channel and follow us on LinkedIn. Until next week, remember to lift as you rise.